Good afternoon. Welcome back to Wolf of Asgard Hobbies. If you're new here, welcome to Wolf of Asgard Hobbies. I am Kyle. Today we'll be finishing it up for the military section of my channel. We did the artillery, we did the cavalry. Now it's time for the infantry. So, call to formation. Infantry is a military specialization focusing on ground foot combat. It is the most numerous and most versatile. So, quick disclaimer, as with my cavalry and artillery video, my information might be wrong, my uniform might be wrong, or just all out together incorrect. So, please do correct me in the comments. And now, another disclaimer. Turns out there's a lot of people being upset with the term Native American or Indian. They would much rather be identified by their tribe. And this video, I'm going to go over the tactics used during the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War, the American Revolution, of course, and the American Civil War, of course. Why? Because Native Americans were involved in these conflicts, and as a result, I am not going to take time to identify each and every tribe. The Iroquois Confederation had 6, later 7 tribes, and I think the Algonquin is another one of those confederations that involved, I think, 4 different tribes. So I'm not going to say the Mohawk, the Huron, the Cree, the Crow, and the Mohican attacked the Scottish, Welsh, English, Irish, Dutch settlers. Yeah, so I'm not going to say I'm not going to say all those different types of Caucasian. I'm not going to say all those different types of Native American. And being Native American myself, and I have my tribal card to prove it. Being Native American myself, the term Native American or Indian, I don't find offensive. There are other offensive terms out there. I don't think Native American is one of them. I'd rather be called Native American than a savage. Okay, so, put that out of the way. Some of the weapons used by the infantry were swords, hatchets, which would later be called tomahawks, single-shot flintlock pistols. I have nothing in the pan. I have nothing in the barrel. And of course, flintlock rifles. Alright, same thing. I have nothing in the pan. And I have nothing in the barrel. Alright. And I'm about to run out of my time limit here, so I'm going to restart and explain the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian War, and then go on after that. So, alright, so the 7 Years' War, back when Christopher Columbus discovered America, which I don't know how you discover something when there's already people on it, there would be a race to America, and there would be three dominant nations: Spain, France, England. Well, after the war concluded and parts of the colonies were divided amongst the three, Florida and a few other, Florida and I think I think it was just Florida. Spain would get Florida, and then New England would get Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Georgia to a degree. I forget which colonies at the time, but they would also share these colonies with France. So France and England would mutually rule over a couple of the territories. And when France requested to put military forts along their border between the nations, England did not agree with this, but France did it anyway. So they sent a up-and-coming commander, George Washington, to go talk to the French with a bunch of his Native American allies. Somewhere during the negotiations, something went wrong, and one of Washington's Native American allies walked up and struck a French commander in the back of the head with a tomahawk, or at that time a stone hatchet, because we haven't got that far yet. So this caused a small skirmish amongst the British and their Native American allies, the French and their Native American allies, and then the news got back to France. France sent over a piece of paper that Washington couldn't understand because he didn't read French at that time. He didn't understand French, again, at that time. We'll catch on to that later. Anyhow, not understanding what he was reading, he just signed it. And what he signed was more or less a warrant. He signed saying that, yes, he was guilty in the assassination of the French commander during one of the first battles. And so this would lead to a conflict between British and French on the colonies, but also lead to battle between the British and French over in Europe, which also involved Prussia, Saxony, Spain. It's easy to see the 7 Years' War as the First World War, or at least a preview of the First World War. And so, yeah, it took 7 years, hence the name 7 Years' War in Europe, before Europe finally calmed down, signed a bunch of new treaties. And about that time, I want to say about the same time, maybe shorter. I'll correct myself in the comments, well, in the notes. France pulled not all of it, but pulled its territory away from Britain and went up into the Canada region. That's why you have French and English-speaking Canadians. And Britain would take over the colonies that France just willingly gave to them. But however, some of the tribes in the region would not only fight for France, would also fight for Britain. Two examples of this are the Cherokee and the Seneca. But yeah, during this conflict, not only would they recruit Native Americans, they would also recruit militiamen while they were still sending troops overseas. And there is actually a list that I have around here somewhere because I don't remember all of it. There was a list of requirements that a man had to meet before he can join the militia. So I'm going to find that real quick and I'll read it off to you. Okay, so before the whole United States Constitution thing was ever signed or even a thought, militiamen would be called upon by the respective nations, French, British. But let's jump ahead real quick and read what it says. Amendments to the Constitution of the United States of America, Amendment 2, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, arms recently has become very subjective because they had muskets. Actually, I forget what the name of the rifle is. I'll throw that up. But it was a repeating, self-loading black powder rifle. And if you watch Ian McCullen on Forgotten Weapons, if you do flintlocks percussion rifles in the search, he will bring up weapons from the time period that were repeating or self-loading black powder firearms. So it's funny, for something that's a single shot musket, they found a way to make it shoot more rounds. So, I also found what I was looking for. Remember, so, well-regulated militia means that the militia is regulated. there actually were some requirements, which I said earlier, to be a militiaman. You couldn't just jump in and go. One of the requirements was you are to be equipped with a large caliber rifle with bayonet. If there was no means of attaching a bayonet, you are to purchase a sword. The barrel of the rifle no less than 3.5 feet long, a pound of powder, 4 pounds of lead, and of course it helps to have a mold to make bullets. The rifle, here you are also to have a knapsack, blanket, canteen, and then everything else is just, extra, like a spare flints for your rifle, flint and steel to make fire, eating utensils, dining plates, a means to clean your firearm should it get dirty. There was also, according to School Gladiatoria, when there were reports of the American Revolution going on in England, it was reported that militiamen were seen carrying a brace of pistols, 2 pistols, and in place of the sword and bayonet, they had a tomahawk, which at this point, everything was a tomahawk. From the actual tomahawks that were made of stone, to hatchets found on the frontier, to the iron hatchets that we know now. Everything back then was called tomahawk. Then once you had your proper equipment, you were to meet for drills 6 times a year, 2 days in April and October for drills, and 1 day in May and June for inspections. However, some militias would take this a step further and actually hire professional or retired soldiers to act as drill instructors. And another example, going back to the American Revolution, was a New York Grenadier Company, which was a militia group who hired British drill sergeants to train their militias in the way of the grenadier. So they would fire their rifles, they would have grenades, which this poor paper mache grenade is the closest example I have. In fact, they were one of 8 professionally trained militias, and unfortunately their unit did not survive until at the end of the American Revolution. They were completely annihilated, and they were called braver to a fault. Another one, I have it again in my notes because I don't remember this. Some of these militias would also have their own uniforms, their own flags, and one of them was the 1st Pennsylvania Regiment, whose motto was Domari Nolo, meaning refuse to be subjugated. So a bunch of random people of random firearms, no training, does not make a militia. That makes an armed populace. A militia, to a degree, is trained. Though not as well as a military, they are, in fact, trained. So, with that out of the way, let's go over the weapons, with the exception of the grenade, because I don't have a lot of history on this. If I had to tell you real quick, they're about the size of a baseball. They were usually cast iron, glass, ceramic. The inside was hollow. You'd pour your powder, cork it, put a fuse in, light the fuse, throw the grenade. But they weren't used on the field in any tactical sense. These were more for like sieges or shock and all tactics. Like you would open door, throw a grenade, wait for it to go off, go in. You wouldn't have these on the battlefield because let's say if you were to throw the grenade, you hit and drop it, well, you're dead, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. But you could potentially kill 3 to 4 of your own fellow soldiers, which this is why these rarely saw battlefield use. So, the grenade out of the way, let's go over the weapons. And I'm once again about to hit the 8-minute mark of my time limit. So, this here is a trapper pistol. Unfortunately, the trapper pistol is not historically accurate. I was misled. I thought, trapper, like fur trapper. So this would have been about right around the time period. No, the trapper pistol was invented in 1780. So after the 7 years and American Revolution. But unfortunately, it's what I have, so it's what I'm going to use. This is flintlock, double set trigger, has a finger hook for extra grip. So if you're way back here and you don't have a good grip, you just move your finger 1 forward. Bring your hand up a little higher. Now you have a much better grip. So, So that, because that's irrelevant to what I'm doing, I'm not going to mention anymore. But these more than likely will see usage in the 1800s, because remember, after the American Revolution, but before the American Civil War, so from about, so like a good 40, 60-year gap, there were Texas Rangers, Arizona Rangers, Nevada Rangers, New Mexico Rangers, which will happen later, California Rangers, and one of the requirements was you had to bring a brace of single-shot pistols, so 2 pistols, your own rifle of a large caliber, and supply your own horse. But again, we'll get to the Rangers later. So a flintlock pistol, and I like to think before the French and British started warring with each other and their Native American allies, they would more than likely have bought or traded hatchets from the French. Because remember, again, this is a French-style hatchet. It isn't until later that we come to know it as a tomahawk. And then a Kentucky rifle, which was invented in circa 1700s by a Prussian man, Martin Malin, I believe is his name, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which would also give it the name the Pennsylvania rifle. It is 50 caliber, flintlock, anywhere from 50 to 70 grains, black powder or black powder substitute, and actually, according to some sources, actually not even a source, Jonathan Ferguson from the Royal Arms and Artillery, and he has his own channel on YouTube. GameStop is also one he participates on. Pistols would fire a more fitting caliber ball, such as this is a 50 caliber pistol. This will shoot a .490 or 50 caliber ball, while rifles, on the other hand, with the aim of firing faster, would fire an undersized ball. So even if this is a 50 caliber rifle, it would more than likely fire a 45 or 44 caliber ball. Which does make sense. With your rifle, you want to shoot faster, but if you're resorting to your pistol, you want to be accurate. That's why the pistol shot was much more of a fit. And then, if obviously you can't fit a bayonet to the Kentucky rifle, so sword, a cutlass. Cutlass, the 17th century English used cutlass is from a 16th century French word, cutlaus, which comes from, it's kind of an Italian word. It's similar pronunciation, but it means large knife. It would be used amongst sailors, soldiers, frontiersmen, woodsmen. It was based loosely on a medieval falchion. That's why it's a much shorter, broader blade with a slight curve. Let me unsheath it real quick. But in in English-speaking Caribbean islands, this wouldn't even be called a cutlass. It wouldn't be called a falchion. It would be called, and wait for it, machete. But cutlass, to my understanding, from French cutlaus, from the Italian, don't know, it just means large knife. So this isn't a sword, this is a large knife. Alright, so I'm going to go get dressed in what at the time, militiamen should have looked like. And then we're going to go into tactics. As you see, here I am. Of my rifle, 3.5 foot long, large caliber. My cartridge box, haversack, and according to the School of Gladiatoria reports, a brace of pistols, my tomahawk, and you can't see them, so I'm going to lower you down a bit. I'm also wearing gaiters. And gaiters. So this is roughly, according to reports, what your militiamen should look like. Right, let's go into tactics. So I'm going to get this one out of the way real quick. We have the volley fire, which is, front row, back row, fire a shot simultaneously into a column of, well, usually the enemy. So with that one out of the way, who can reload and fire the fastest? Usually one. But there's also a fire by company, which, as you can see here. So let's say Company A fires first, and while it's reloading, Company B fires second, and then by that time Company B is done firing, Company A should be reloaded, and then just continues firing like that. It's an alternate firing mechanism, so it ensures that no one company, and it can be broken down to individuals too, so it's like no one person is ever without being able to fire. So Company A fires, they get hit. While they're reloading, they fire either Company A or B. Then the entire group is reloading. And then Company B fires. They're reloading. They're ready to fire. But by then, Company A is firing again. So that's fire by company. And then, of course, I already covered a volley fire. There's also open order, which is similar to the company. Only they'd be, smaller. So let's break these two up here. Bring this one here. And then bring these forward. So this is an open formation. As you can see, they're not as solid as the company, but they're not as solid as the line either, making it smaller. So you took a 12-man line, broke it up to 4 groups. Well, 3 groups of 4. Now you can do this again. You can have volley fire where all 3 companies fire into this group. Or you can fire by company A, B, C. Or you can do it by row, which I've heard, what was it called? Fire by file, which if I remember correctly, never happened as a popular video game and movie thing, but it wasn't a real thing. I'll correct myself, but it's where like, okay, file A, front row, fire. File B, back row, fire. And if you had file C, the row behind them, fire. Which, if I remember correctly, was not historically a thing, but I could be wrong. And there was another one, but I need to go get some props for this one. It was known as street firing. Let's say you have a group going down a narrow bridge or down a street, hence the name street firing. You'd have them line up in rows like they are, but how it would work, depending if you were firing and advancing or fire and retiring. Let's say you were firing and advancing. This row here would fire, either turn right, turn left, or split down the middle and go down the row Indian file. But let's say they fired, okay, they turned left, back row moves forward, that row moves forward, this row comes behind them, is reloading, this row fires, turns out, then this row goes forward, this row goes forward, comes back, is reloading, now this row fires, turns left, this row goes forward, this row goes forward, this row comes back, and that's fire and advancing. Fire and retiring, which so far in my mind it seems like it'd be faster, is just like that, but in reverse. Depending on what side they're on, let's say they're in front of you because we're already here, they're firing, and now you're firing and retreating, or fire and retire as we call. This row would fire, come back, reload, this row would fire, turn to the left, come back, this row would fire, turn left, come back, and that's fire and retiring. This is also street firing, because as you can see here on my lovely built bridge, there's really not enough room for it to break it into a line or really a column, so you would have to fire and advance like we saw with the pins, or fire and retire again like we saw with the pins, because you can only get one row of soldiers down the street and then behind the other row of soldiers. Alright, so let's do something that the I'm going to show you something that the light infantry used, and later it would be the Rangers, and then later it would be just the entire military after the Revolution. So this tactic here is more, as you can see, as an open order formation. And this would definitely be a fire by individual thing. So let's say every man on their, to the left. Actually, except for him, he's blocked behind, we'll say that's a tree. So his right will fire into this group here, protecting their, captain. That's why he's on a horse. I think, yeah, you can't even see that. So one person in each group will fire, reload, and while that person's reloading, their partner will fire, and then when he's reloading, so it'll be, okay, fire, reload, fire, reload, fire, reload, fire, reload. And the idea was to harass the enemy and provoke them into firing, because it was here, we have a group of 3 here, 3 here, 3 here. So if all 3 of them fire, well, these 3 no longer have anything in the barrel. So now they have to reload. But one of these people do have something in the barrel. So he can fire, take one out. Well, he's reloading. His buddy takes his shot, takes another one out. Okay, now they're all reloading, and so these 3 fire, these 2 miss. He fires, takes one out. Well, he's reloading. His buddy fires, takes him out. Now he's reloaded again. Now let's go to the front row. You see where this is going. So this front row fires. Let's say they get lucky and just take one out. Well, it's still, okay, so he fires, misses, he's reloading. He fires, hits him, reloading. He fires, takes him out, reloading. He's loaded again, fires. And let's say for some weird reason, because the captain didn't get off his horse, he takes out the captain. Now, as a result, these 3 surrender. They don't know what to do. Surrendering is probably their best option. So as a result, the blue here lost 7 people, one of them being a captain. Well, the orange here lost 1 person. So this tactic was developed by light infantry after battling with Native Americans, and this tactic will later be used by the entire army, which will later be used just overall. I mean, even today, you know the term, where's your battle buddy? You don't leave without your battle buddy. Battle buddies. So these were just some of the tactics that the armies at the time would have used, in fact, because America was slow to everything. We would continue to use these tactics up until after the Civil War, which means the American Revolution, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Alamo. These were the tactics we would have been using until after the Civil War. But this isn't their story, or this is even the militia story. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button. If you have any suggestions or criticisms, leave a comment. And if you want to stay tuned for my next project, don't forget to click that subscribe icon and ring that bell. So, until our next project, have a beautiful day.